Do celebrities have a magic pill? That's the question I keep coming back to. Because when you have something like spasmodic dysphonia, dystonia, muscle tension dysphonia, or any voice disorder that changes how you sound, it's really easy to think, well, if I had celebrity money, celebrity doctors, celebrity actress, celebrity specialists, I'd be fixed. And maybe access helps. Maybe money gets you to the right doctor faster. Maybe fame opens doors. Maybe you get more options. Maybe you can afford treatments that normal people cannot. But when you actually look at celebrities who have dealt with spasmodic dysphonia, dystonia, or major voice problems, the story is not usually they found the magic pill. The story is more like they searched. They struggled. They tried treatments. They adapted. They had setbacks. In some cases, they had to accept a new version of their voice. So in that way, celebrities, they're just like us. That part matters because when you are dealing with this in real life, it can really feel like somebody out there must know something that you don't. So today, I want to look at some of the famous people connected to spasmodic dysphonia, dystonia, major voice disorderments, muscle tension, what happened, what treatments, what they've discussed, what theories, what is the origin of their condition, whether there's really a secret fix. Is there a magic pill? Let's find out. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, I am not a speech therapist, I am not a vocal coach. I'm just your buddy, also having spasmodic dysphonia, sharing what I've learned as I go. Also, not every person in this video has the exact same diagnosis. Some are directly connected to spasmodic dysphonia, some are connected to dystonia, some are connected to dysphonia or other serious voice conditions, but they all point to the same bigger question. What happens when your voice, the thing people know you most by, suddenly does not work the way it used to? Let's start with Shania Twain. Shania Twain is one of the biggest names people bring up in the muscle tension dysphonia and spasmodic dysphonia community. And I want to be careful with the wording here because Shania's own explanation matters.
Well, if you're bit by a tick that carries Lyme's, then you will get Lyme's disease, and that's what happened to me.
And so do you actually know, like, where you were at
yes,
that moment?
Yes. I was on the up tour at the time, nearing the end of that tour. Yeah. And I was out horseback riding in the woods and got...
In America was this?
Yes, in Virginia. And I got, I found the tick on me, and luckily, and so I was able to get tested right away, and treat it right away. But it was, and you get typical tests at that time anyway were to get your vital organs tested. So, you get your, you get a brain scan, heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, all of that. And I was clear of any, immediate effect on anything vital.
So you think, all right, I'm in the clear.
That's right, I think I'm in the clear. But I start having problems with controlling my voice.
She has said she believes Lyme disease damaged her nerves around her vocal cords and led her to dysphonia. So I am not saying, or am a doctor, this is definitively what caused it. I'm saying this is the theory Shania herself has shared. And that's a huge distinction because from the outside, people may just see Shania Twain, superstar, massive career, iconic voice. But her story is that her voice changed so dramatically that she thought she might never sing again. She has talked about losing her voice, searching for answers, eventually undergoing throat surgery, and then learning how to sing with a voice that was not exactly the same as before. Some reports describe her condition as Lyme disease complications leading to vocal cord paralysis, and others describe dystonia and vocal cord nerve damage. She has also discussed surgery, vocal rehabilitation, all a part of her comeback.
But it was a neurologist that discovered the problem. So it was actually a neurological thing and not at all, a typical voice related things. So it was a mystery for a very long time. And I'm just really glad that I got to the bottom of it. And it's been a lot of work and a lot of continued work. It's a permanent injury, but I did it. I made this album, and I'm out doing it, and I'm just so grateful. You know, it was a huge challenge to get.
That is no magic pill. That is the years of fear, searching, treatment, adaptation, and learning to work with a changed instrument. And that is why I think Shania belongs in this conversation. Because whether people say muscle tension disorder, Lyme disease-related nerve damage, or vocal cord issues, the bigger human experience is something this community understands very well. Your voice changes. You do not know if it is coming back. People still expect you to be who you were, and you have to figure out who you are with the voice you have now. Next, Selma Blair.
Calm down. Tell me what's wrong.
Something awful happened last night.
What do you mean?
I don't think you want to know.
Selma Blair went public with multiple sclerosis, and one of the things people noticed right away was her voice. In interviews, her voice sounded shaky and strained. She had explained that she had spasmodic dysphonia connected to her MS symptoms.
When I first got MS, I had no idea what it was or how it would affect me. And so my speech, as you'll notice, is I have spasmodic dysphonia right now. It is interesting to put it out there, to be here to say this is what my particular case looks like right now, and it could be very different in a year for the better.
This matters because it shows how voice symptoms can be part of a bigger neurological picture. Spasmodic dysphonia is labeled a neurological voice disorder where the muscles involved in speech can spasm involuntarily. That can make the voice sound strained, shaky, tight, broken, breathy, unpredictable, and the always famous, you sound like you could cry.
What's your prognosis?
The doctor I saw, he said within a year, I could have, at the time, he said, 90% of my abilities back. So this is to say, let's meet again next year and see if I'm better, if I'm not. And I can still have a conversation. That's good enough. I was a little scared of talking. And even my neurologist said, no, this will bring a lot of awareness because no one has the energy to talk when they're in a flare-up. Mm-hmm. But I do, because I love a camera. Just kidding.
Well, baby, you got a date. I'll see you in a year.
Okay.
You could see the vulnerability in that because when your voice changes publicly, there's no hiding it. You can't just put it away. You can't pretend it's not happening. Every interview, every public appearance, every conversation becomes part of the condition. And again, no magic pill. For spasmodic dysphonia, generally treatments may include Botox injections, voice therapy, and sometimes surgery, depending upon the person and the diagnosis. But Botox is not usually a one-and-done cure. The National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders say Botox can improve the voice for about 3 or 4 months before symptoms gradually return, meaning repeated injections are usually required. That's important because if you are new to the condition and you hear Botox, you may think, oh, there, that's it, that's the fix. But for most people, it is maintenance. It can help. It can be a life-changing help for some people, but it's not necessarily I'm cured and I never think about this again. Next, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Availability of organically grown and non-pesticide treated products in supermarkets and specialty stores.
RFK Jr. is one of the most controversial, to say the least, and most recognizable public voices associated with spasmodic dysphonia.
In 1996, when I was 42 years old, I got struck with a disease, a neurological disease, an injury called spasmodic dystonia, and it makes my voice tremble. And I actually, at the time, I didn't know what was wrong with it, but when I would go on TV, people would write me letters and say, you have spasmodic dystonia, and you should see Dr. Blitzer, who is the physician who was most famous for treating it. And I ultimately went to see him, and he confirmed that I had the diagnosis. So I it makes it, I think it makes it problematical for people to listen to me. I cannot listen to myself on TV. I will never listen to this broadcast, and I won't listen to any, so I feel sorry for you guys having to listen to me.
He has said his voice was once very strong and changed somewhere in midlife. Reports say he was diagnosed with spasmodic dysphonia in the 1990s, and the condition is commonly described as a rare neurological disorder causing involuntary spasms of the vocal cords. He's talked about trying therapies and undergoing a procedure in Japan with the titanium implants. We know it as the thyroplasty 2. It's intended to keep the vocal cords from constricting. Now RFK Jr. has also publicly linked his voice condition to the flu vaccine. This is where we have to be very careful. That is his theory. That is his belief. But medical experts have disputed that connection and have said that the claim is not supported by science. Not really anything new for RFK Jr. I think this is the important part of the conversation, because when you have a condition like this, you naturally want a cause. You want the why. You want to know, why did this happen? Was it stress? Was it trauma? Was it illness? What was going on in my life at the time? Was it overuse, neurological, something I did, something I said, something done to me, one thing, or 10? Oh, I get that. I get that completely. But spasmodic dysphonia is frustrating because the exact cause is often unknown. That's the official story. And everything else is a theory. Some sources discuss possible risk factors or triggers like family history, respiratory illness, injury to the larynx, overuse of the voice, or psychological stress. But the condition is generally understood as a neurological voice disorder and not something with one simple universal cause. So with RFK Jr., the important takeaway is not that we accept every theory as fact. The takeaway is even someone with money, access, public attention, and every reason to chase answers still had to search, experiment, and live with uncertainty. Next, Darryl, DMC McDaniels from Run DMC.
We go to rock around, that's right, on time is tricky.
And just to be clear, I mean DMC, Darryl McDaniels, not Rev Run. Because I've been saying in several interviews, including my interview with Kathy Run from Run DMC, it's not him. This hit hard because with DMC, his voice wasn't just his voice, it was his instrument. It was his identity. It was his career. It was part of one of the most important groups in hip-hop history. He has spoken openly about addiction, depression, suicidal thoughts, and a voice condition connected.
You're DMC. DMC or Run DMC, first to go gold, first to go platinum, first on the cover Rolling Stone, all that stuff. How in the world can you feel depressed and feel like that? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know what it was. It was just this void in me.
All of which due to a voice condition connected to spasmodic dysphonia. Think about that. When your entire public identity is built around your voice and then it is taken. It's no longer just a medical issue. It's an identity issue. And this is something I think people outside of voice disorders do not always understand. When your voice changes, it changes how people treat you. It can change whether you want to make a phone call. It can change whether you speak up in a group. It can change whether you want to go out. It could change whether you recognize yourself. For a performer, it gets multiplied. DMC's story is not just about treatment. It's about survival, mental health, addiction, identity, finding a reason to keep going when the voice you knew is not there or is not the same. Again, no magic pill. That brings me finally to somebody that hits very home for me, Shadoe Stevens.
Well, you know, John, a speech is how I make my living. In fact, you might say that my tongue got me to where I am today. In fact, you might say that my tongue is the most important organ in my body.
Shadoe Stevens is a legendary radio personality and voiceover artist. He hosted American Top 40, did major voiceover work, the Hollywood Squares, built a career out of having one of those unmistakable radio voices.
You know, it's like you go through it and then you go, what does it all mean? And it's all this spiritual journey. And so in the end, you live in, one of the last pieces is called The Consequences of Optimism. I believe that there is no choice but to be optimistic all the time, because the brain defaults. The filtering architecture of the human mind is built to look for problems. It's fear. And fear lives in us because the brain gives more weight to negative information than positive information. And we have the amygdala, which is the storehouse of all phobias. And the phobias are, look out for the saber-toothed tiger, going back, thousands of years. But there's no saber-toothed tigers. But what is that? What is that? And what do I have to watch out for? And the moment you give your attention to that negative thing, it tells a story. It makes a list of everything else you have to be worried about, everything else that has ever gone wrong, every failure, every disappointment, everything that you have to be afraid of. And if you listen to it long enough, it becomes overwhelming and your mind goes, I can't take it anymore.
This matters to me because he was a mentor. I looked up to him, and I come from radio also. When you're a radio person, your voice is not just how you communicate. Your voice becomes your identity. It becomes your confidence. It becomes how people recognize you before they even see your face. It becomes your proof that you belong behind a microphone where you so love being. So when someone like Shadoe Stevens deals with a serious voice problem, that nerve hits different. He has been publicly connected to voice treatment discussions, including work associated with Dr. Morton Cooper and voice rehabilitation. In Dr. Cooper-related materials, Stevens is quoted as saying, almost by magic, my voice problems disappeared. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not saying I know every detail of Shadoe's diagnosis or medical history. I'm saying he belongs in this conversation because he represents something very specific. What happens when a professional voice person starts losing trust in their instrument? That's not just a throat problem. That's an identity earthquake. Because if you were known for your voice, radio, singing, podcasting, announcing, performing, whatever, suddenly that voice starts tightening, breaking, strangling, becoming unreliable. You don't just ask, how do I fix my voice? You ask, who am I if I can't sound like myself? That is why Shadoe Stevens matters in this episode. He represents the broadcaster version of this story. Person whose whole career is built on sounding effortless, confident, powerful, present. And then suddenly, the voice becomes something you have to fight for. You have to stop, rest, rebuild. And that's the part that people hate. We want the treatment that lets us just keep going. But sometimes the treatment is silence. Sometimes the treatment is rest. Sometimes the treatment is not pushing the instrument while it's injured. Finally, Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert.
I tried, we assumed it was some kind of strep throat. We assumed it was just normal laryngitis. We, did all the normal treatments for that stuff. Went to an ear, nose, throat person to see if there was any kind of a tumor in there. Eventually ended up under an MRI machine, finding out what's wrong with my brain, trying to decide if I had, aneurysms or other kinds of, maybe there was a stroke I didn't know about. So we went through all those options. Eventually, I ended up in a psychologist's office with the assumption that my problem was psychological, because spasmodic dysphonia has this weird characteristic that you can speak okay to your cat, as I could. You can do a poem, sometimes you can sing, very much like a stutterer, but you can't have a normal conversation with a normal person. And you especially can't talk on the telephone. That's just the hardest thing if you have spasmodic dysphonia. So when you explain to a doctor, in this context I can talk, in this context I can't talk, it sounds like a psychological problem. And so, they could be forgiven for saying, let's look into this, right? I mean, that's just logical. So the psychologist assumed that also was the problem because it looked like maybe stress was behind it. She suggested Valium as a potential solution. I decided not to try that route because I was pretty sure just internally it didn't feel like stress was the cause, because I didn't feel like I was having more problems on stressful days or less problems on unstressful days. So that just didn't feel right. So I decided to not try that. And it wasn't until after I had Googled and gotten a name for this condition, spasmodic dysphonia, that I could take it back to my doctors, and ended up taking the same route from my general practitioner back to the ear, nose, throat people, and they said, yeah, I think there's a doctor in our system. This was the Kaiser system, very good doctors, by the way. He thought there was a doctor who knew a lot about this. So he referred me to Dr. Smith, and when I went into her office, I started talking, if you can call it that, in my halting spasmodic dysphonia voice. It took her 5 seconds to say, spasmodic dysphonia.
Scott Adams, no matter how you might feel about him in recent years, is one of the most famous and non-singer examples of spasmodic dysphonia because he has written and spoken about it publicly. He was nearly speechless for years and eventually underwent the SLADR surgery, selector laryngeal adductor renovation. Close. This is the famous surgery at UCLA. This is one some people might point to and say, see, there's the cure. But even here, I'd be careful. Surgery is serious, and it's not for everyone. It is not a casual option. It is not guaranteed to be the right path for every person with spasmodic dysphonia. The broader medical picture is that spasmodic dysphonia does not have one universal cure. Treatments can improve. Symptoms and quality of life can improve. But the path depends on the person, the type of dysphonia, the severity, and the medical team involved. Commonly discussed options include Botox, voice therapy, in some cases surgery, the UCLA SLAT-R, or Japan for the thyroplasty too. So back to the original question. Do celebrities have a magic pill? No. They may have more access. They may get diagnosed faster. They may get better specialists. They may afford surgery, therapy, vocal rest, travel, and treatment options that maybe you or I struggle to do. But do they have a magic pill? They search, they adapt, they grieve the old voice, they experiment, they sometimes improve, they sometimes relapse, they sometimes come back changed, they sometimes build a new normal. And honestly, I find that weirdly encouraging because it means I am not failing just because I have not found the one secret celebrity treatment. I have not found the magic pill. It means this is real. It means this is complicated. It means progress may come from a toolbox, not from a magic pill. Maybe that toolbox includes doctors, maybe Botox, maybe voice therapy, maybe lifestyle changes, maybe nervous system work, maybe vocal exercises, maybe surgery, maybe rest, maybe acceptance, maybe patience, maybe all of it. But if Shania Twain, Selma Blair, RFK Jr., DMC, Shadoe Stevens, and Scott Adams can all deal with major voice issues in public, then maybe the lesson is not that fame saves you. Maybe the lesson is that even when the voice changes, the person is still there. And Shadoe Stevens is the one that makes me think about my own history in radio. Because when you have spent years using your voice professionally, losing control of it is not just frustrating. It feels like losing a piece of your proof that you were ever who you thought you were. But maybe that also is the point. Maybe the voice changes, but the communicator is still there. Your voice may crack, it may shake, it may lock, it may get tight. It may disappear on you. It may come back for an hour. Then it may leave again. But you are still in there. And you are here, and you are doing exercises, and you are researching, and you are trying things, and you are refusing to disappear completely. And that matters. There may not be a magic pill, but there is always a reason to keep attacking. I'll see you soon.